Theodore Robert Bundy, charming, charismatic, and so approachable, is what people would say about Ted Bundy. What wasn't there to like about the average guy who went on dates with the local girls and volunteered at shelter? Aside from his charm and ability to sweet-talk his victims, he sometimes pretended to be an authority figure. Or he would even pose as an injured person, portraying himself as vulnerable and incapable of harm. Bundy's ways and good looks, alongside the false idea of him, provided the opportunity to get close to his victims, lure them to his vehicle, sexually assault, and brutally murder them. The strangest part was that sometimes he went back to the bodies of his victims to have sexual intercourse with them. After several years of committing murders and evading the police by changing his looks, the police eventually caught Bundy while he was driving a stolen vehicle. During his trial, he tried to chalk down his behavior to growing up in a dysfunctional family. Still, the evidence against him was overwhelming because 12 severed heads were found in his apartment, and there was speculation that his murder count was more than 36 people. He was sentenced to death by electrocution. Louis Garavito. Just like people say the devil made me do it, in Garavito's case, it was more in tune of my negative experiences made me do it. Garavito would tell stories of how his father was not having sex with his mother, but with him. He witnessed all his father's cruelty towards his mother, even while she was pregnant, and many people believe that it did a number on him psychologically. Garavito would later on confess to killing at least 193 boys and teenagers, even though it was speculated that his victims were as many as 300 children. Sadly, he killed so many victims which went unnoticed because they were primarily homeless and from poor neighborhoods, so most people didn't give a hoot about what happened to them. His years of killing came to an end when he was arrested and sentenced to 40 years, which was later slashed to 22 years because he helped the police locate some of his victims' bodies. He could have become eligible for parole in 2023, but as things turned out, he died from severe eye cancer in that same year. H.H. Holmes. H.H. Holmes studied medicine, but not for the right reasons. His focus seemed to be on taking lives instead of saving them. As a child, Holmes was fascinated with skeletons and obsessed with death. He also loved the good life and would be involved in so many scams and frauds to maintain his lifestyle. For instance, when he was in medical school, he stole dead bodies from the laboratory and staged them to look like they died in accidents, just so he could claim their insurance money. But after a while, it seemed like such insurance scams with already dead bodies were no longer satisfying his dark desires because Holmes started killing people close to him, like his wives, workers, and mistresses. In fact, anyone he could benefit from their deaths, even if it meant selling their skeletons. Holmes's murder castle, which served as a hotel, living quarters, and retail outlets, was another wonder, especially when he frequently fired building engineers and architects so that no one could know the entire building layout. The castle was said to have trapdoors with soundproof rooms, stairs leading nowhere, and even a basement that served as his dissecting lab, where he committed most of the murders. After many years of committing murders and fraud without being caught, Holmes was later arrested in Boston, and despite confessing to 27 murders, he only went to jail for killing his business partner and accomplice, Benjamin Pitzel. It happened that both of them planned to fake Pitzel's death for $10,000 in insurance, but Holmes double-crossed him and killed him for real. Holmes was hanged for his crimes in 1896. Jeffrey Dahmer. Dahmer committed all sorts of crimes, ranging from necrophilia, murder, cannibalism, lobotomy, and preservation of his victims' body parts. Assuming he existed today, the internet would have had a field day about his case, and he would trend for all the wrong reasons. The scary part was that he almost got away. Jeffrey Dahmer started as a troubled child obsessed with death and doing bizarre things like cutting off the heads of animals and mounting them on stakes in their backyard. Then, as an adult, he moved on to killing people. His first victim was a male hitchhiker whom he strangled and cut into pieces. He would often cut open the brains of his victims to see whether or not he could control them or turn them into zombies. Dahmer was later arrested in 1991 after one of his victims, Tracy Edwards, managed to escape and led the police back to his home, where they found some severed heads and arrested him. He was convicted of killing 15 men and boys, even though he confessed that he killed way more people. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, but was later beaten to death by an inmate who swore God told him to do it. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy would act as a gentleman, contribute his quota to society by participating in charities, and even entertain children with his clown attire. Still, nothing was ever the way it seemed with him, as he would murder people in private, making no one the wiser. In the space of 6 years, Gacy would murder at least 33 young men whom he lured into his home with the promise of a job. What made it sad was the fact that Gacy targeted young boys because he was in denial and uncomfortable with his sexuality. This would make him sexually assault and torture his victims before killing them as a way to cope. That was just the tip of the iceberg, as after his arrest, investigations revealed that he buried his victims in his basements and inside the walls of his home. keeping journals and records of his crimes as souvenirs, as though he wanted to keep his victims close to him and be reminded daily of what he had done. He was executed in 1994 by lethal injection. Richard Ramirez. Richard Ramirez would discover his bloodlust as he watched the pictures of the Vietnamese women his cousin allegedly raped, tortured, and killed. It would seem like a typical day and just a discussion between two guys, but it would set the trail that Ramirez would later follow. The deal was sealed when Ramirez witnessed that same cousin shoot his wife to death in cold blood, helping set him on the path to becoming a cold-hearted psychopathic killer. But first, he took it one step at a time because he started with petty crimes like breaking into people's homes and stealing, for which he went to jail for a while. The years Ramirez spent in jail did not help matters, as it made him more bold, and he graduated from petty crimes to sexually assaulting and murdering his victims. He would break into people's homes not to steal as he used to, but to sexually assault and murder them, earning him the nickname Night Stalker. When he was arrested and convicted for killing 13 people, he did not show any remorse for what he did. Instead, he sent in several appeals while he was at the prison. As fate would have it, he died while waiting for the pending appeals. Edmund Kemper. This American serial killer, Edmund Emil Kemper III, would later be found guilty of the murders of 7 women and 1 girl. But his journey as a psychopath started at quite a young age, when he decided to shoot his grandmother because he felt like it. And he also shot his grandfather just for witnessing the murder. Talk about not wanting to leave any witnesses. Kemper was sent to prison for his crimes. Still, the several years he spent in a maximum security facility did not turn him into a better person in any way, because he continued his killing spree, killing his mother and her best friend after his release. Kemper's hatred for his mother was manifested in his choice of victims, who were primarily female student hitchhikers he picked up along the road while working as a driver. He even said in an interview that the reason he chose his victims was because they represented what his mother liked and desired, so he had to destroy them. Despite his actions and words when he was tried, he was found legally sane, but strangely, he pleaded for the death penalty for his crimes. His request was denied because capital punishment was suspended in California then, so he received 8 concurrent life sentences instead. Rodney James Alcala. His deep-rooted feeling of being unwanted was ever present in his life, taunting him and making him feel he cannot connect with others. His father's abandonment made him worse, so he just thought the challenge he faced was a one-way ticket to violate other people's rights. Alcala's time in the military could have been a welcome development. However, it was hard to pinpoint whether or not it helped him with the skills and precision he needed in his murderous rampages. However, he was discharged after serving 4 years, which made him feel unwanted and angry once again. Alcala's vulnerability to abandonment got worse when he later appeared on a TV dating show, and his partner from the show publicly rejected him, which nudged him in the direction of killing as a way of avenging the rejections he felt over the years. His method of torturing his victims, as reported by prosecutors, was quite peculiar, as he toyed with them by strangling them till they became unconscious. He would then allow them to revive, enjoying their pain. He often repeated this process several times before killing them. He was later arrested, and even though he has a direct connection to about 9 murders, the exact number of his victims may be as high as 130. In 2012, he died of unspecified natural causes. Dr. Harold Shipman. Dr. Harold Shipman, a British doctor from Nottingham, was nicknamed Dr. Death and the Angel of Death. Shipman used his opportunity as a medical practitioner to murder his victims, who were mostly older people under his care. He would give his older patients an overdose, sign their death certificates, and falsify medical records, claiming that they were seriously ill. His style of killing them by overdosing and the fact that he was a trusted medical practitioner helped mask his real identity as a serial killer. Some people said that Shipman was very close to his mother before she died of cancer, and there were rumors that he killed those people out of his pain for his mother's death, or to avenge. Some others suggested that he was just removing older people from the population. Despite all the speculation, one sure thing was that he was fighting his inner demons. Even though Shipman was convicted of 15 murders after his arrest, police said that he might have killed up to 250 people under his care between 1975 and 1998. He would later commit suicide in his prison cell using his bedsheets. Fred and Rosemary West. This couple took the vow, for better or for worse, to a whole new level when they decided they had to be partners even in their murderous tendencies. All their victims were young, vulnerable women, and they preyed on them to satisfy their sexual fantasies, after which they would torture and mutilate them. They buried their victims' dismembered bodies in the cellar or garden of their house, making their people in the locale tag their home House of Horrors. Even though this couple committed most of their murders together, it is believed that Fred killed 2 of their victims alone, and Rose was not left out in this occasional me time, as she was the one who killed Charmaine, Fred's stepdaughter. The couple were arrested and charged in 1994. Fred West committed suicide in his cell within 1 year, with tags and a rope made out of a blanket. He wrote a suicide note with a drawing of a tombstone at its base. It said, "In loving memory, Fred West, Rose West, rest in peace where no shadow falls. In perfect peace he waits for Rose, his wife." On the other hand, Rose still lives in prison.